The early modern witch trials in Europe and the British American colonies spanned from about 1400 to 1775. It resulted in the prosecution of around 100,000 people, with 80% of those convicted being women. And as I read about this topic, I found myself particularly drawn to the witch trials in the British Isles in the 1590s that involved King James VI and I. One of the most central pieces of literature produced at that time was this mysterious book written by King James. This text was claimed to have the ability to protect Christianity from the wiles of the devil. But what influenced King James to write it? What is this book about? And why were the majority of people prosecuted for witchcraft women? These are questions I want to answer. So today, we're going to talk about King James and his witch trials. While on a sea voyage with his wife Anna in 1590, a storm broke out, with winds that primarily affected the ship carrying the royal family. King James believed that this meant that the storm was unnatural and an assassination attempt that was the result of witchcraft. This assassination plot, he believed, had been connived by an international cabal of witches. This conjuring supposedly involved spiritually linking James to a cat and drowning it in order to make him drown at sea. James believed that there was a terribly pervasive culture of witchcraft that threatened all of Christendom and would cause people to lose faith if laws failed to aid the preservation of Christianity's influence on society by being more vicious when prosecuting witchcraft. James wanted to create a manuscript that would offer instruction to the reader on how to identify, hunt, torture, and execute witches and sorcerers in order to protect Christianity from surrounding pagan communities. His writings were also heavily influenced by his experiences being personally involved in the North Berwick witch trials, which had been held in Scotland in 1590. It was with this goal in mind that King James wrote Demonology in form of a dialogue, divided into 3 books, by the High and Mighty Prince, James, by the grace of God, King of England, Scotland, France, and Ireland, Defender of the Faith. This is the lengthy title given in the 1603 reprint following his ascension to the English throne. However, it was first published in 1597. With instruction manual in hand, witch hunters went on a rampage. The trials mostly persecuted women. According to the text, initiation into the practice of witchcraft included entering a pact or covenant with the devil, therefore becoming an apostate from Christianity. They would attend Sabbaths, also called synagogues, as Christians did have a history of associating witchcraft and various forms of debauchery with elements of Jewish culture. One of the reasons for this association was possibly because, according to the Bible, elite Jewish religious leaders were responsible for paying to have Jesus Christ assassinated. These Sabbaths were presided over by the devil and included initiations for new followers, lewd behavior, and the casting of spells to destroy men's virility so they couldn't have children. The problem is, many of the people being accused of this had done nothing wrong. They were innocent. But why were the majority of people accused of witchcraft women? To answer this, one has to refer to Christianity's best-known dissertation on the subject of witchcraft, the Malleus Maleficarum. It was published in 1486 by Heinrich Kramer, a Roman Catholic inquisitor of German descent. According to the historical record, Germany saw the most extreme European witch trial between 1581 and 1593 in the independent Catholic diocese of Trier. Protestant beliefs are primarily grounded in Roman Catholic tradition. Believe it or not, Protestantism is an offshoot of Roman Catholicism. The practices that one finds in Protestantism are actually rooted in both Roman Catholicism's theology and philosophy. As per the Malleus Maleficarum, women are described as being spiritually weaker than men, weaker in faith, and more disposed to developing perverted and lustful minds than men are. that their nature in and of itself causes them to be intellectually deficient in comparison to men. Question 6 in the Malleus, which is titled, Concerning Witches Who Copulate with Devils, Why is it that women are chiefly addicted to evil superstitions, explains these ideas with interesting detail. Here are a few quotes from the work. Now the wickedness of women is spoken of in Ecclesiasticus 25. There is no head above the head of a serpent, and there is no wrath above the wrath of a woman. I had rather dwell with a lion and a dragon than to keep house with a wicked woman. And among much which in that place proceeds and follows about a wicked woman, he concludes, all wickedness is but little to the wickedness of a woman. Wherefore St. John Chrysostom says on the text, it is not good to marry. What else is woman but a foe to friendship, an unescapable punishment, a necessary evil, a natural temptation, a desirable calamity, a domestic danger, a delectable detriment, an evil of nature, painted with fair colors. When a woman thinks alone, she thinks evil. The many lusts of men lead them into one sin, but the one lust of women leads them into all sin, for the root of all women's vices is avarice. When addressing the reason for the Church's beliefs that women were easier for the devil to seduce, Kramer wrote, but because of these times, this perfidy is more often found in women than in men, as we learn by actual experience. If anyone is curious to the reason, we may add to what has already been said the following: that since they are feebler, both in mind and body, it is not surprising that they should come under the spell of witchcraft. For as regards intellect, or the understanding of spiritual things, they seem to be of a different nature from men, a fact which is vouched for by the logic of the authorities, backed by various examples from the scriptures. Terence says, women are intellectually like children. The natural reason is that she is more carnal than a man, as is clear in her many carnal abominations, and it should be noted that there was a defect in the formation of the first woman, since she was formed from a bent rib, that is, a rib from the breast, which is bent, as it were, in contrary direction to a man, and since through this defect she is an imperfect animal, she always deceives. Though these ideas are challenged in today's discourse, society still sees women as inferior to men in matters of religion and other social institutions like family, education, economy, and government. So, back to the trials. The trials and executions continued with fervor until it became inconvenient for the king himself when he was falsely accused of witchcraft. King James eventually began to feel that he went too far with his support of the witch trials and took steps to limit prosecutions. In the end, the witch trials left thousands of people brutally executed, and life just went on. The dead were eventually forgotten for a long time. King James went on to commission the King James Version of the Bible not long after writing Demonology, and the King James Bible is the most widely read version of the Bible in human history. James would later meet George Villiers, who is claimed to have been King James's last and greatest love. In fact, when closing out a letter he wrote to Villiers in 1623, King James wrote, God bless you, my sweet child and wife, and grant that ye may ever be a comfort to your dear father and husband. Villiers then wrote in his response letter to James, I naturally so love your person, and all your other parts, which are more than ever one man had. I desire only to live in the world for your sake. I will live and die a lover of you. So, there's that. In March 2022, then First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, issued a formal posthumous apology to the thousands who were executed during the Scottish witch trials. When I think about this event and this conspiracy of witchcraft, I find myself doubting what the authorities claimed. I don't think that witches caused that storm at sea. I'm sure there were malicious people practicing paganism back then, the same way there were malicious people practicing Christianity. Every barrel has its rotten apples, but I don't believe that sorcery was the reason for that storm. I think that the crew who was responsible for planning and managing the voyage chose a dangerous time to sail, and when the trip went wrong, they shifted blame to witches rather than taking responsibility for their mistake. As I read the Malleus Maleficarum, especially the sections that described women as being a desirable calamity, a delectable detriment, an evil of nature painted with fair colors, it looked more like women were being blamed for feelings and urges that men around them were struggling with, feelings that were not the women's fault. When we practice our faith, we also align ourselves with a school of thought that dictates how society's institutions of family, religion, education, economy, and government should be run. I think that people should be free to study and think critically about their faith. I think that when we take time to actually comprehend the founding social and political principles of our faith, it gives us the opportunity to assess whether or not we truly want to align ourselves with it. The more I read these religious philosophers' work and thought about the ideas they were presenting, the more I got the feeling that God never asked them to write these texts. I think that their work was centered on progressing political interests and promulgating prejudiced beliefs rather than teaching people about humanity's connection to God. God is being used, exploited really, to spread distorted ideas and further the machinations of the men writing these religious pamphlets and dissertations. These works don't seem to be about teaching and extending compassion to the masses. Rather, they seem to be campaigns to conquer the mind of the reader. Maybe the real conspiracy was the government and church's greed for power and their willingness to devalue and take human life to force compliance. In the name of God, of course. So, have you read Demonology or the Malleus Maleficarum? And do you think that women really are spiritually and intellectually inferior to men? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.